Wait
asked
a minute,
me
there's an
to
extra
announce
fee
to the
for there's
oilum.
an extra fee for the announcement.
Moshe Weinberg asked me to announce to the oilum that on 85 Storm Mount, there's a minyan
No,
daily.
85 Bannockburn.
I'm sorry, 85 Valley. It's good you're here.
I'm sure 85 Stormont has a minion too.
Tomorrow, 85
It
Storm Mount
will
has a minyan.
tomorrow.
85 what?
Storm out.
No, what's
Ravi, who's the new Abba? I thought you said there's someone.
No, I didn't say there's someone. I said a new fee. You have to pay a
Akiva,
fee for the
Akiva,
announcement.
why is the YouTube making noise over here?
Because it probably is unmuted. You have to go to YouTube
Okay.
and mute
Okay,
the
I'll do
sound. Today's sponsors for today's shir are the Menzalewski family, Elina Nishmas, Reuven Rebelezer. His yard site is coming this week, and the Lewis family, Elina Nishmas Chayasara Bas Doiv. Yard site was today. Neshama should have an aliyah. I heard Yisrael Lewis gave out some kugel. Shh. I heard. Is that true? Yisrael deny? Is that true?
Well, where's the source from? Where did you hear that?
Doesn't matter with it. I can't divulge my sources.
I mean,
It might be fake news.
I think, did you hear it from doctors?
Anyway, L'chaim. I said it for somewhat in jest. Our Rav seems not to paskin that way, but Rabbi Moshe Taub wrote an article today in Ami, do shuls have to lay in all the parshas that were missed? Is there a chiyuv on the base medrash to hear all of them?
It depends if they make money off the aliyahs.
Right? No, it's not. You're only supposed to do one aliyah and then lay in all of it at once.
It depends. If the shul's wearing masks, they can barely make it through one parsha.
No,
So
I felt Heshi was really gasping for breath today by the end of laning, Heshi Bullman. But I'll insist, if we do have to catch up, doesn't seem like our Rav is paskening that way, but if we do have to catch up, all the Kadeshim have to be made up too.
Oh, yeah.
Heard that, Moish?
Yeah.
Doctor's orders.
That's what you call a quid pro quo. That's,
It's only fair if.
Okay, should we get started?
yes, please.
Okay. Zok to Hela Gemara. Zok to Hela Gemara. Some people are on 7613 and they're asking me to pull them into the room, but so they were just told to go to 1948. So we got all the way down to the bottom of Tzadik Chesam and base. Yesterday we talked about whether or not the top of the crushim had an amma, or if they were sanded down to a point, and that had an impact because the ureas that covered the Mishkan, would go further down if they didn't have the extra amma on either side, which was the thickness of the wall. Yesterday, somebody asked.
Can you mute everybody? There's background noise there.
Okay.
Yosy, I'll do it. You please focus on the shear.
Okay. Yes. So yesterday, somebody asked me. I think David Lightman asked yesterday. How do we know that the wagons were 5 amos long? So at the time, I didn't prepare today's daf yet, so I didn't know. But the Gemara talks about that today, although it's still not 100% clear. So let's see what the Gemara says over here. Tana Devei Bishmol, Lama Mishkan Daima. What does the Mishkan compare to? Because remember, it has at the back of the Mishkan, the urea went onto the floor, either 2 amas according to Rav Yehuda and 1 amma according to Rav Nechemia. So it was like a train of a bridal gown. The Isha Shemahaleches B'Shuk V'Shifaleh Mahalchad Achareh, and her train will drag on the floor behind her. That's the vision that was created by the Mishkan. Tanur Rabbanim, Charutzim Hayu Kroshim, V'Chalulim Hayu Adonim. And the best way to describe it is with a picture, and that is the Kroshim had 2 legs that stuck into Adonim. That means they had to be scratched out all the way around and just to allow the 2 pegs to protrude, which fit in to the Adonim. So Rashi explains the exact dimension of everything. The 2 pegs were a quarter of an amma wide by a half an amma deep, and they were a full amma long because they went into the sockets, which means there was a border all the way around of a quarter of an amma, and the center in between the 2 pegs was a half amma, and that was the exact dimensions of the Adonim, so that the crushing fit right into the Adonim. Now, I always struggled with understanding what was the purpose of the Adonim, and I don't know the answer. I'm just going to throw out, and I'll ask the Adonim to help me. The reason why I thought it was is that just in case the ground that the Mishkan was placed upon was not perfectly even, the Adonim, being that they weren't directly connected to Krushim, would be able to sit on the surface, and some Krushim might not have sat all the way down to the bottom of the Adonim. If there was like a drop in the land, if there was a cavity in the ground. But the Brichim held all of the Krushim exactly in line, but the Adonim, depending on if there was a hole, might slip down, which means that those pegs might have been partially visible if there was a hole and one of the Adonim went down. That's what I'm postulating. I don't know if that's true. I want to ask the Adonim if they ever heard pshat. Because if everything was always flat, why do you need Adonim for? It would just
Was the
just spin
Adonim
around.
was the Adonim above ground or below ground?
Above ground.
So how did it help that the walls, if a little wind came, that the walls didn't fall down?
Because even if the Adonim, oh, you mean because there's no foundation? No, that's because you have three walls together. When you have three walls together, bolted together, that stops it from falling down. It's like when you put up a sukkah, once you get like the corner piece, you always start with the corner piece, so the whole thing shouldn't fall down. So once you have a corner, I think that holds it in place.
Didn't
I
the
think-
Anania covered flat and everything?
I was thinking that, but if everything was perfectly flat, then what help with the Adonim? And why does it have to be removable? Like it almost like it's made to adjust the height.
Didn't they
Didn't it-
overlap one to
Think
the
of
next?
Lego, didn't it? Think of Lego pieces. Maybe one went into one side of the Adonim and the other went to the other side. Is that possible?
No,
Yeah,
no,
they
you
interlock.
see for the picture, each of the Adonim was individual. So therefore, each Adonim only went over one peg.
On the top, they would connect one to
At
each
the
other.
top, they were connected, but at the bottom, it wasn't even this picture. If you look at this picture, it's not one piece. These were two
Can you lift
individual Adonim.
lift the picture?
Oh, I'm sorry,
can't-
it's here. There was two individual Adonim. These were not connected. So
Oh,
if
they're
there's
two individual.
yeah, which and the only thing that I could think of is if the land wasn't even, it would adjust accordingly. But like you said, if the Adonim made everything flat, what was the purpose of it? So I never had a clarity in how that worked.
Can I make
The
a suggestion?
sockets, it went into, didn't they go into the silver bottoms?
Those are the Adonim. That's what we're discussing. These are the silver bottoms.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
It could be that just purely from a practical point of view, the wood would get harmed or warped or rotten or whatever from the sand or from whatever was on, and the Adonim made out of silver, wouldn't have that same.
But the bottom of the peg that went into the Adonim would also come in contact with the ground. But I guess it protected. At least it was less. It was less.
Lift the picture a little more. Is there something? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yes, see, by having the Adonim, they could place the Adonim in the ground first and make sure the ground is level, and then the whole post can be inserted into them. So
Means
it
they
gives
first
you-
leveled the ground using the Adonim.
It's possible. It's all easier to make sure everything's arranged evenly with just
That's
little
possible.
Adonim.
We do the same thing when we hang a
HVACs.
boiler system on the wall. When we have a wall-mounted boiler, it's very hard to level a big thing. So we'll take a 2x4, we'll level it, we'll bolt it to the wall level, and then we just put the whole board on top of it, and that makes everything level. So maybe that was the answer. So I don't know the answer. We have a lot of good ideas that were shared tonight, and hopefully one or all of them are right. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. V'chalulim hayu Adonim v'nirin. Now this is a whole new subject. Now we're focusing on a different area. We're not looking down now. We're looking up. If you were inside the Mishkan and you looked up, we know that the Urios were panels that were 4 amis wide, and if they were the lowest set of Urios, they were I believe 28 long, and if they were the Urios Izim, they were 30 amis long, and they were sewn together. So the Urios at the bottom, the one that were made out of tchelis for Agam and Tchela Shani, those ones were 5 panels, and 5 panels were sewed together, and the 2 sets of 5 panels were held together with S hooks. So there were loops on the end of, so we have 2 panels, each panel is 5 panels sewed together. So in the case of the lowest level of Urios, it was 4 times 5, it was 20 by 28 and 20 by 28. You had 2 pieces that were 20 by 28. They had a whole bunch of loops along their inner edges, and the 2 loops from each set of Urios were connected together by S hooks. So if you looked up from the bottom, what you saw were S hooks connecting the 2 sets of Urios. And the Gemara tells us, "V'nirin krosim bilulois kikochavim barakia." They glistened. They were golden hooks. They glistened when you looked up at them, and they looked like they were stars. Tanuraban, Urios hatachtoinos, the lowest Urios, the ones that we said there were 10 panels, 5 and 5, and each of these panels were 4 amas by 28 amas. So they were made out of tchelas, shal tchelas, v'shal argamon, v'shal tela ashani, v'shal sheish. So they were woven from 4 different minim. The elyonos and the upper set, shal maisi izim, were made out of the hair of goats. Ugedoyle chochma, shenemer be'elyonos, the izim required a greater skill to produce, more skill than what was required to weave and prepare the lower Urios. How do we know this? From the Psukim. Every woman who was a chachma slave, which is a level of wisdom, but by the izim it says a greater level of wisdom, which is a higher level of chachma. Rashi says, Yiseres chachma mashma. Nesal Liban means their hearts raised them, it's a higher level. Tavu es ha'izim, they were the ones who spun the hair of the goats. B'tanya mishum nechemia, shituf be'izim, the shituf means they were washed, they were clean. B'tavui min ha'izim. So they were what the hair of these were washed while they were still on the izim, but tavi, and they were spun while they're on the izim. So the question is, why in the world was it necessary to spin it straight off the back of the izim? What's the big deal if you shech the izim and then you take it off and spin it? Well, why was it necessary to do that way? So there's a whole bunch of different svaras. We learned earlier a svara that it gleamed, it was a more pure, it glistened better, it was more beautiful. And that's a very nice pshat. But there's 2 off the beaten track pshatim that I want to share. One was a beautiful pshat, and that is that we know a Baal Chai, a live animal, cannot be makabel tumah. But once an animal is dead, it could be makabel tumah. There was many women who were involved in this malacha of izim, and just in case the one that a woman would be a nida, they would be metame it if they were touching something that's not connected. By spinning it right off the izim, it actually was mechuber to a Baal Chai the whole time, and therefore they could spin it without it becoming tummy. So the question arises, so if there was a woman who was a nida, let somebody else do it. Why did it have to be that lady? So I saw somewhere, I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw that the lesson from here is every person has his chelik of his contribution, and nobody could take away what your contribution to society is. And therefore, since this woman, her contribution that the Rebbeinu Shalom set aside for her was to spin these threads for the Urias Izim, the Rebbeinu Shalom made it no matter what their situation is, they'll be able to accomplish their job without any impediment.
Didn't they have to cut it off?
I'm sorry?
Didn't they have to cut off the behemoth sometime?
Yeah, but at that point they could move away. They could spin it and then they could step aside and then somebody else can cut it off.
But why would you kill an animal if you didn't have to? You just can't willy-nilly.
Or they could have cut it off, or they could have cut it off. They could have cut it off the animal first and then spun it. Not necessarily kill the animal, but they could have cut it off.
Oh, cut it off and then.
Yosy,
Yes.
can I ask you a question?
Please.
Have you ever seen to be spin the wool from a izim while it's still connected to the animal?
Did I ever see that happen?
How could it happen? How could you spin a wool when it's still connected to the body?
That's why it was Nasal Liban. I have no idea how they could do that. I have no idea.
It was a special skill that these women had.
Yes, maybe you can find a video on that.
I hear. So Rabbi Elvin spoke out from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that the reason why the Rebbe Shalom wanted it to dafka be spun from a Balchai, from something that was actually alive at the time, is the Torah is trying to teach us the cheshivas of life, even the life of an animal. Life is so dear that there's a special cheshivas of taking the ariyos, the dafka from something that was alive. Okay, now we're going to get up to porch minyanim. Imagine you have a person has two apartments in an apartment building. I like Collins Avenue as my Rosh Hashanah, so we'll pick, let's say, the Vendome. A person has two apartments side by side in the Vendome, and there's a porch on each one of those apartments overlooking Collins Avenue, and they're having a porch minyan, and a guy's passing around tabak, and he says, tabak, sure. So he takes a pishka of tabak, and he throws it over to the next porch so that that person can enjoy the tabak. So that was the case that was doimid to the agolos, and that was the case that we said would be deraisa. So Amar Rav Mishum Abchia, agolos, the wagons which we had this exact member before, tachtein, the area beneath them. And we already explained the area beneath them means the area beneath them where there's a gap in the crushim so that it's open to the air above, because Rav also told us that there's no such thing as a Rosh Hashanah that's under an awning or under a cover. Uveinein, and in between the agalas, but tzideim, and on their sides, that means between the agala and the side of the road, Rosh Hashanah. All of those are considered Rosh Hashanah. Omer Abaye, bein agala l'agala. Between two agolos, I need to get a paper for this because this is going to involve some detail. Let me see if I can grab a paper that I can write on. Okay, so bein agola l'agola, between each agola, kamole arach agola, was the same distance in between the two agolos, was the same distance as the length of the agola. The chama arach agola, how long was each wagon? Zok the Gemara hey amis. It was 5 amas long. So therefore, what it's telling us is there was 5 amas between each wagon. So if I have two agolas riding side by side, and each agola is 5 amas, and there's 5 amas in between, so from end to end, we have a total of 15 amas, right? Zokt Gemara Lomali, why did the agolas have to be 5 amas long? So everything is based on the agola being 5 amas long. Why did the agolas have to be 5 amas long? Bedalidu palgasagi. It would be enough with 4.5. And like we discussed a couple of blot ago, that there's different ways of configuring the krushim on the agolos, and it wasn't necessary to have a full 5 amas because you could have laid out the krushim on the agolos in a different configuration. Let me see if I could find it. On the art scroll, those pictures. So if we look over here at the pictures, there was 2 ways that they configured them. The Maskana argument said the way they configured them is the krushim was stood up lengthwise. So this is an amma, this is an amma. So you had 2 ammas here, and then you had an amma here, an amma here, 2 ammas here, and this was the blank amma in between that we said those taboyas were in. So really, there's only 4 here. And they could have pushed them closer together, the 2 taboys should touch each other, and then they would have only taken up 4.5 amas. They didn't really need the full 5 amas. They didn't need to leave this full gap. That's if they were standing up. But even if they were lying down, like in this picture, let me pull it down. Like in this picture, if they were lying down, that means the width of each is 1.5 amas. 1.5 amas times 3 is 4.5 amas. They didn't have to leave these little gaps. They could have pushed them all tight together, and then they still had a 0.5 amma free. So why did the agolos have to be 5 amas long to accommodate the 3 krushim if they're lying down, or the 4 krushim if they're standing up? Why couldn't it be 4.5 tefachim?
Yosy,
Yes.
where would the tabois be if it was in that second configuration?
So let's look over here. Where would if it would be a little closer together?
Saying if you had the
If you wanted to squish them to be 4.5 instead of the full 5.
No, when you had the 1.5, when you 1.5, 1.5, 1.5.
Oh, so they're lying down and you put the next one on top of it. What happened to those tabois? They would get
Right.
crushed.
Right.
I guess the Gemara doesn't remain that way. The Gemara remains that this is how they did it. But I guess
Right.
at that point, I guess they had to put spacers in so that the
Uh-huh.
tabois shouldn't get crushed. They probably had to put spacers in, like pieces of plywood or whatever. They didn't have plywood in those days, but so let's see what we have over here. So, Frank the Gemara, why did the Agudos have to be 5 amas long? 4.5 would have been sufficient. So, the Gemara, ki heichad litchichi crushim. And we actually learned this when we learned the layout of how the crushim were placed on the Agudos. You didn't want to push everything directly tight together because they were afraid it would be too squishy. You always have to leave a little bit of extra room. So, Amar Rava, Tzidei Agudah, on the sides of the Agudah was kamolei rachav Agudah, was the width of the Agudah. What does that mean? Rashi explains what that means is there's the Agudah itself is the frame, it's the basket, it's the container of the Agudah. And the Tzidei Agudah means how far the wheels stuck out from the Agudah. You know, when we have, let's say, vans, a typical service van, the wheels are contained within the van. And if you're inside the van, you actually see the wheel well because the wheel sticks within. But there are some, if you ever saw these big bumper pickup trucks, or if you've seen tow trucks, that you have a double rear axle, so the second tire sticks out past the frame of the bed of the flatbed. So too, a lot of trailers you see when they're towed, the tires stick out. There's a fender that sticks out of the actual box. They're not contained within the box. So these are Agudos as well. The tires stuck out, but they stuck out much further than the frame. So Rava said, Tzidei Agudah kamolei rachav Agudah. The same width of the whole Agudah. So let's say you have a flatbed that has a 5 foot, they're 5 feet across. If the flatbed is 5 feet across, we're saying the tires stuck out in total that amount as well. So here we're saying the kamei rachav Agudah shtei amos umechza. So the two walls, or I would call the two side walls of the flatbed box were 2.5 amas apart, and then the added distance because the wheels that it shouldn't topple. So because of that, Tosfos learns, and I'm going to draw it for you because it's much easier to draw it than to read it in Tosfos. Tosfos learned that these wagons were actually double wagons. So they started off with a beam, one beam that was 15 amas long. One beam. I didn't do my thingy well. Then what they did was they placed 4 sets of wheels. Now this beam reached to the edge of the 2 wagons, which was like this. And then they had 4 sets of wheels along the path. And they had the same thing in the back. So it wasn't really 2 Agudos. It was really one big contraption that was bound together. And the way it was set up is, I apologize, I did it a little bit wrong because
Yosy,
yes.
Don't become an architect.
Thanks for the advice. So what Tosfos learns actually is the beam. This was 15 amas. I didn't really draw it right. So you had a beam in front and a beam in back. That was 15 amas, and they each had the 4 tires on them. And from here to here is 15 amas. But then what they had is they had 2 wagons here, and 2.5 amas from this side. They had they had the cross beams of 1 wagon and 2.5 amas from the other side, which worked out 15. If you take off 2.5 and 2.5, it means from here to here was exactly 10 amas. And they lied the crushim 10 amas across here. Now these are rock solid because you're supporting the crushim at either end. You have 2 beams from 1 wagon here and from 1 wagon here, but it was all bolted together as one big apparatus. So this is rock solid, steady, firm. And they just lined the crushim up along these 4 beams. But again, we're 10 amas apart, which means they're able to support the crushim on either end. They're not shifting at all. Nevertheless, they still had that extra half amma because the Gemara does say that the Rosh Hashanah is 16 amos wide, not 15. So they still had a half am on either side for a Levi who was walking behind. Even with all this, if he saw some shifting happening, then he would quickly run in here and adjust. And even though the tire stuck out 2.5 amos past where the crushing were, he reached over in between to adjust any shifting load. And this would have had this is double worth. This is talking about a 15 amma wide cart that's like 45 feet wide. That was a massive triangle and a massive wide load sign on there. So this is what.
So you didn't have two crushing going next to each other, Yosy. It was.
What do you mean?
You only had 10 feet of crushing. You didn't have 20 feet of crushing.
That's right. It wasn't 20 feet wide like Rashi, and in fact, it did not infringe on the private property. As a matter of fact,
it was a longer wagon. You had longer wagon. You had more wagons going back.
No, the Gemara says it was only 5 amos long, which means they would have had to pile the crushing higher. Because the 5 amos doesn't change. Toshos can't argue on the Gemara. But since they put everything together, they had to pile them high. So according to Rashi, there was 12 per wagon. This apparatus must have had 24 crushing on it. But this is rock solid. Okay. So monster trucks were invented.
How many
in the
oxen
Midbar.
did they have pulling it?
How many oxen?
Yeah.
I think it was 2 oxen per wagon. So that's basically what this Tosfos tells us.
Pulling a lot of weight.
Yeah, there still must have been some divine intervention. Okay, let's see what the Gemara. Can you imagine if they had a flat tire? Okay, let me see the Gemara weiter. Chulius habor. So imagine you digging out a bore, and what do you do with the sand that you dig out of the bore? You put it around the bore as a border, as a wall. So if you had an area around the bore, or you built around the bore with rocks, like in typical wells nowadays, they have a brick circle around it. Chaim Tzvi, if you go to his well on Bannockburn, that's what he has built around the well. He has the brick, the round brick shape of the well. Shein Gavoin Asara, if they're 10 tvachim high, for Rachvan Arba, and they have a top surface of 4 tvachim, that means they have the status of a Rosh Hashanah. If this bar is situated in the middle of Rosh Hashanah, and you're standing in Rosh Hashanah, and you take water out of that bar, if you take water out of that bar, or if you put anything on top of that bar, on top of those walls, chayiv, one would be chayiv, because he took something from a Rosh Hashanah into the Rosh Hashanah, or he took something from the Rosh Hashanah and put it into the Rosh Hashanah. But pachas mikain, if it's less than 10 tvachim high, potter, because then it only has the din of a karmelis, and the karmelis is only also b'dirabanan to transfer from it to a Rosh Hashanah or to a Rosh Hashanah. Frek the Gemara, lamali lemisni choli sabor. To tell us this halacha, I don't need choli sabor. It could either talk about a wall 10 tvachim high, or it could talk about a bar 10 tvachim deep. Why do we need a case where there was a border around the bar? That just complicates it, and it doesn't teach us any new information that I wouldn't have known from a much simpler case. Lamali lemisni choli sabar vasela. Listening habar vasela. The Tana is trying to tell us a chiddush, and this chiddush was expressed by Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, bar vichul yosa mitzdarfen la'asara. Let's say I had a bar that was only 8 tvachim deep. It would still be Rosh Hashanah, but the border around it is 2 tvachim high. So now, if I count the border that's above ground, and I go from the top of the border down to the bottom of the bar, I'm at 10 full tvachim. The chiddush is that's also makes it into a separate rishus. If there's a bar in Rishus Harabim that's 10 tvachim deep, and it's 4 tvachim in diameter, you're not allowed to fill from it on Shabbos, because you're taking water from a Rishus HaYachid, which is the bar, into the Rishus Harabim, which is where you're standing. So what do you do if you're thirsty? So you have some options. You have one option to make a wall around the area that the bar is in, 10 tvachim high. So now you made that whole area into a Rosh Hashanah. So Tosfos Bamerks that we learned about the Pasi Birois. I don't know if the other remembers, for the Oile Regel, what they used to do is, in order to allow them to drink from the wells, if there was a well in the middle of Rishus Harabim, they would make these 4 L-shaped small walls, and that was enough to allow them. That was enough to make it into a Rishus HaYochid, so they'd be able to bring their behemoths in there and use this as a rest area and take from the well. Why does our Gemara say that you need the full wall? So Tosfos asked that kasha, and he says, "Aval pasin loy mahani ela be'er mayim chayim." Pasin would only help if it was a be'er mayim chayim, or bor harabim, or if it was a bor that was made for the public to use. It wasn't a personal bor. Kedetnam be'perik oisin pasin aval bor hayochid. But if this was a private bor, oisin lo mechitza. You have to make a mechitza. So the whole heter of pasin birois was only for the public, so that they should be able to easily access drinking water. Then Shabbos, you wouldn't be able to drink from this bar on Shabbos because you can't take out. But there is a way. If you put your head and your whole body over the bar, where you're not choshed that I'm going to pull back with the water in my hand and I'll have it all drunk before I move out, then I'll be fine. And a bar together with its chuya would be mitzaref l'asara. So this would mean we're looking now for a wall to be matir the bar. So it must be, what the Gemara is saying is you have a bar here, and if you had a big bar around it, look over here, a big bar around it, and the chuya together with the bar, so the chuya is like the 2 tefachim high, and this bar is 8 tefachim deep, so then that's a good wall for here. And then maybe you just build walls on 3 sides. But whatever you have a bar b'chuyoso, as long as together they're 10 tefachim, it would act as a wall, even to be matir. So I don't know if this was in the picture before. So here's the bar that I want to drink from. I'm in the Rishus Harabim. I built 3 walls, and then near it there's a bar that has that's 8 tefachim deep, that has a chulya around it that's 2 tefachim. So this wall here will act as a good wall because there's 2 tefachim of chulya and there's 8 tefachim of bar, and that's enough to be matir and to create a wall for the purposes of drinking from this bar. What if there was a post in Rishus Harabim, Gavoya Yud, it was 10 tefachim high, V'rachav Daled, and it was 4 tefachim wide, V'zorak v'nochal gabav, and you threw on it. So what are the problems over here? Normally, if you throw something from a Rishus Harabim to a Rishus HaYochid, you're chayiv because you were machnis. But we all know that the airspace of Rishus Harabim, once you're above 10 tefachim, you're in the area of Ptur. So just to make it visual, you have this wall at 10 tefachim. It's exactly 10 tefachim. And you're throwing something from here all the way up to here. As soon as it crossed into the Rishus Harabim, as soon as it was above 10 tefachim, now it's in a Makom Ptur. So you actually threw something into a Makom Ptur, and then from the Makom Ptur, it went and rested on top of this Amud. So the Gemara wants to know, would that be an Isser of bringing from Rishus Harabim to Rishus HaYochid, since your object had to pass through a Rishus of a Makom Ptur along the way? Now we know Rishus HaYochid is Oila Adler Rakia. So if we make a dotted line, the moment this projectile, whatever you threw, crossed this line, it was in Rishus HaYochid. But so in the air, it went from a Makom Ptur into the Rishus HaYochid. That is the question. Would that be considered a Melacha Deraisa? So Amud Rishus Harabim Gavoy Yud V'Rachav Dal V'Zorak V'Noch Al Gabav Ma'u. Miyamar, and do we say Harei Akira Be'Isser? The Akira was Be'Isser in Rishus Harabim. Harei Anocha Be'Isser. The Anocha, it landed Be'Isser in the Rishus HaYochid, and therefore it's going to be Asr. Dilma, Kivan de Mi Makom Ptur Kasi, since it landed, the Anocha occurred from a Makom Ptur, Loi, that's mafsik between the Akira and the Anocha, and it will be potter. Zog to Gemara, Amalei, Masnisani, it's a Mishnah. We don't know which Mishnah, but it's a Mishnah. Also, Shaila Rabbi Yosef. Then he went to ask Rabbi Yosef the same Shaila. Who was asking the Shaila? Rav Mordechai. Rav Mordechai asked Rava. Rava said it's a Mishnah. He went to Rabbi Yosef. Amalei Masnisani, it's a Mishnah. Also, Shaila Abaye. Amalei Masnisani. Amalu, you know what he told him? Kulchul baroika da adadi tafisu. You're all spitting the same spit. Kulam roik echad atam roikim. You're all spitting the same generic party line, non-answer answer. What are you, how come you're trying? I asked you a question. Don't tell me to Mishnah. Omer lay. So I told him back. So I guess the last person he was speaking to was Abaye. Abaye told him, I don't understand. We're not giving you a generic no answer. This is a real answer. This is not a political presser. The Atloy Tizbra, wouldn't you agree to us as well that it's a Mishnah? And I'll tell you which Mishnah we're talking about. The Mishnah we just learned. But now we learned Hanoitel Mehen. If you take from them, let's see what the Aleph says. Let me see from the Bach. Hanoitel Mehen. The Hanoitel Al Gabon. So we're talking about this chulya around the board that our Mishnah is discussing. If you take something off of them or place something on them, you're chayiv. So we're talking about a chulya that's 10 tefachim. How could you possibly put something on top of something that's 10 tefachim high if you're not going through a makom p'tur? Amarlei, he said that's not a rye from there. Dilma masnisin b'machat. Maybe we're speaking about something like so small, like a needle that doesn't take up any space, so I don't have to go into the makom p'tur. Effectively, that makes no sense. Machat nami e efsher b'leimad leporto. At the end of the day, if you want to put it on top of an omid that's 10 tefachim, so in the Rishus HaRabim, you have to go above that 10 tefachim to be able to line up there. So no, the Isle Morsha. Maybe at the top of the column, there was a groove dug in, and you're putting it in to that groove. So when you place it into that groove, you're actually below 10 tefachim. So are you going to tell me if it's below 10 tefachim, it's not a Rishus HaYachid? That's not true, because most of the top surface of this post is 10 tefachim. There's a little crack in it. That's like tzidei Rishus HaYachid, and that's considered Rishus HaYachid. So there you have a way of placing something onto an omid, and you're always below the 10 tefachim of height. But when you're throwing something, there it has to actually go above 10 tefachim to land on top. So therefore, Reb Mordechai said that this your raya from the Mishnah is not a good Mishnah, not a good raya. I'm sorry, David.
Yeah, just a question. Sorry. The in Rishus HaRabim, when you find a place that sticks up 10 tefachim, that's considered not Rishus HaRabim. That area is
Correct.
That not okay?
Correct.
So over here in this case, where they're talking about this wall, is it for sure considered Rishus HaYachid or just not considered Rishus HaRabim anymore?
It's for sure Rishus HaYachid.
Whose Rishus is it?
Rishus HaYachid and Rishus HaRabim by Shabbos has nothing to do with Choshe Mishpat. It has nothing to do with whether it's private property or not. You can go in the middle of the 401 and you can put up a post that's 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim, like 10 tvachim high, and that is a Rishus HaYachid. Try collecting toll there. See if it works for you. But so in Choshe Mishpat, it's actually not a Rishus HaYachid, but Lagabe Hilchas Shabbos, a Rishus HaRabim, Rishus HaYachid has different rules.
Okay.
Yosy?
Yes.
Didn't the Gemara just make an attempt in the Mishnah, according to Yochanan, and say that it was talking where altogether it was 10, but really the depth of the bar, let's say 8, and the height of the wall was 2. So then if that's the case of the Mishnah, how could the Gemara have a Havamina there's a riot if that's the case? Because you're always
beautiful kasha. Because the Mishnah is speaking in all cases. It's saying that's mitzaref to 10, but if you had 10, you'd also be chayiv. One of the cases of the Mishnah is even if the chulya itself is gavoy asara,
okay,
it's also mitzaref. But if it's gavoy asara, that would also surely be a deraisa. Okay. I'm happy you asked that because I wasn't sure if I should speak it out. But now that you brought it up, it's a very good point. So he said you can't bring a raya from the post because if I put something on it, maybe it was a groove. Maybe there was a groove at the top of the post that I put it into. So if I would just draw it quickly, it would look like this. So here's my groove. Here's my post. So even though the top of the post was 10 tefachim, this groove here where I put my needle into could have been less than 10 tefachim, but once the top is Rishus HaYachid, this groove is considered like a part of the Rishus HaYachid, and that would be mechayiv me. That's one option. The other option the Gemara says is maybe, one second. So either this like Moshe inami derama b'charitza, or once this post has a halacha of a Rishus HaYachid, if there was a hole at the side and I put it into the hole, that also makes it, that's also part of the Rishus HaYachid. So it's possible if I'm placing something to place it into a hole that way. However, if I'm throwing something and the nochal gab of my shaila zot Reb Mordechai, is if someone threw something and it landed on top of the post, you don't have a raya from the Mishnah to my shaila, right? Zorach v'noch al gabov. So therefore, all you three people that were saying the same non-answer answer is still a non-answer because there's no raya from those Mishnayos. Zog to Gemara weiter. Amar Reb Meisha, Boy Reb Yochanan, Koshel b'Reshus HaRabim. What if you had a wall in Reshus HaRabim, Gvoya Yud, it was 10 Tvachim high, Ve'ena Rachav Arba, and it wasn't 4 Tvachim wide, so it's not a Reshus HaYachid, because it has to be 4 Amos wide to be a Reshus HaYachid. And Umukaf l'Karmelis, there was a Karmelis that this wall is like basically a fence. If you had a fence that was around the Karmelis, and it abutted the Reshus HaRabim. So the question is, the Karmelis, we know is a Karmelis, but this gate itself, what status does it have? So again, you have a Koisel B'Reshus HaRabim, Gavoya Yud Ve'ena Rachav Arba, like a typical chain link fence, Umukaf l'Karmelis, and this fence is surrounding a Karmelis for also Reshus HaYachid, and then makes it into Reshus HaYachid, which is a typical Erev that we have in our city. We consider all of our streets a Karmelis, and the Erev is a wall around that entire Karmelis, making the Karmelis into Reshus HaYachid, which is why we're allowed to carry. So what if on that gate itself, the Zorak, you threw something up, the Noch al Gabav, and it landed on top of it? So here, it's not a Reshus HaYachid on its own, it's only Reshus HaYachid because it gated another area. Mahu. Miamrinon kiven de'enei Rachav Dalid. Since the fence itself is not Rachav Dalid, Mokim Petorhu, it would have the status of a Mokim Petor, and therefore he's not Chayiv. Since this now is the border of an area that we just made into a Reshus HaYachid by erecting this fence, Kamanda Maladamya, you look at the entire area like it's full to the same level as the top of the fence, and something that sits on top of the fence will now be considered Reshus HaYachid, and it'll be Asr. Amar Ula. Ula said, Kal v'chomer, Lacherim oisa mechitza. If this could be a mechitza for itself, la'atzma lakol shekain, for sure it itself should have a din of a Reshus HaYachid. So therefore, this is more powerful. This fence actually made something else into Reshus HaYachid, so for sure the fence should itself have the din of a Reshus HaYachid. And Reb Zilberstein asks a very interesting shaila. The Shulchan Aruch says, if you have a sukkah and it only has 2 walls, so it's not a kosher sukkah, and you want to eat there, what you can do is you could tell somebody, stand in that position, you be the 3rd wall, and then you can eat in the sukkah. So Reb Zilberstein asks, how about the person himself, who is the wall? Can he eat in the sukkah? And the reasoning to say that he should be able to is because of Kal v'chomer, Lacher Moshe Mechitza, if he could make the sukkah kosher for somebody else, la'atzma lakol shekain, sure he should be able to eat there. So Reb Zilberstein paskins that avada you would not be able to eat in the sukkah. If you're part of the wall, then you can't be possibly eating in the sukkah because you have to be contained within the walls to be able to eat in the sukkah. And it being derived from the Lashon Shulchan Aruch, because the Shulchan Aruch says if you have a sukkah with 2 walls, you're allowed to get your friend to be the 3rd wall. Why didn't the Shulchan Aruch say you be the 3rd wall? Vice the you yourself can't be the 3rd wall. Which reminds me of the story about a guy who went to Satmar Rebbe and said, my friend sent me to ask you this shaila. He did this and this terrible aveira, and he wants to know how he could be misaken that aveira. So Satmar Rebbe chuckled and said, why did your friend send you? He could have come himself and said that his friend sent him. Busted. Zok the Gemara weiter. Omer Rab Chia bar Ashi Omer Rav. V'chein Omer Rab Yitzchak Omer Rab Yochanan. Koisel b'Reshus HaRabim Gavoya Yud. If there was a koisel, a wall in Reshus HaRabim that was 10 Tvachim high, ve'ena Rachav Arba, but it was not 4 Tvachim wide, Umukav l'Karmelis, and it was surrounded with Karmelis. This sounds very similar to a shaila that we just learned that was asked by Rabbi Yochanan, right? By Rabbi Yochanan, that's the same shaila. So now, who's asking the same shaila again? It seems like Reb Chia bar Ashi. Because Reshus HaRabim, Gavoya Yud, ve'ena Rachav Arba, Umukav l'Karmelis, v'also Reshus HaYachid. Hazorik v'noch al gabav chayiv. Why? Lacher Moshe Mechitza la'atzma lakol shekain. So you see, he's paskening just like Ula pasked. Boy Rabbi Yochanan, How about Bor Tisha? This is a fascinating question. Bor Tisha. You have a bor that's 9 tvachim deep. You're in Rosh Hashanah. You have a bor that's 9 tvachim deep, which means this bor now has the status of Rosh Hashanah. Because until it's 10 tvachim deep, it's Rosh Hashanah. So you're allowed to drink from there. You're allowed to go in and out of it. There's no problem. But what happened? You took a shovel. I guess on Shabbos you're not allowed to use a shovel, but you shoveled out the floor, and now with that shovel full of sand that you dig off the bottom of the bor, you've made the bor 10 tvachim deep. And that made the bor 10 tvachim deep. So let's just visualize this case. You have a bor that's 9 tvachim, you take a shovel and you take a shovelful. So you made an akira from a Rosh Hashanah. But now that you made the akira, it just became a Rosh Hashanah because the bor is now 10 tvachim deep. And now you take it out into the Rosh Hashanah. So what's the halacha? Mau akiras chayfetz v'asiyas mechitza b'hadei adadi kasi u'mechayiv. Do you say that he made the akira and it created a bar that was 10 tvachim deep? Those two things happen simultaneously, and therefore we'll say you're chayiv because that is a good akira from a Rosh Hashanah. Oy loy mechayiv, or maybe you're not chayiv. V'im timtza loymer, and if you want to say kiven de have a mechitza asara meikara loy mechayiv, if you want to say that, of course, since when I started making this shovelful, it was not yet a Rosh Hashanah because the bar was only 9 tvachim deep. So if you want to say for sure there you're not chayiv, let's look at a more interesting case. Bor yud. What if the bar was already 10 tvachim deep? V'nochzan l'soicha chol yomiyata. So here I made an akira in the Rosh Hashanah. It was a very good akira. In the first shaila, when I made my akira, it was not a good akira because it was an akira from Rosh Hashanah. It was a akira from Rosh Hashanah still. It wasn't a Rosh Hashanah yet. But now I'm taking a rock from outside the bar, so I'm surely making an akira from a Rosh Hashanah, and I put it into the bar, and so it's a bar yud, and they put it into the bar, but when they got down to the bottom of the bar, now the bar is not 10 tvachim deep anymore, because now it diminished the depth of the bar to 9 tvachim. Now, what is the halacha? Do you say anachas chayfetz v'silik mechitza ba'adei adadi kasi mechayiv? Do you say that putting down the chayfetz and the removal of mechitza comes at the same time and you'll be chayiv? Or loy mechayiv, or maybe you shouldn't be mechayiv. Zok Gemara, Tivshet Leimid Yidei. Rabbi Yochanan, who asked this shaila, could be poshet the shaila from his very own comments that he made regarding another halacha. Titnan hazorich arba amas b'koisel. What happens if a guy throws something 4 amas in Rosh Hashanah and it hits a koisel? We learned that this case was speaking about Agudah DYLive was a sticky fig, and if you throw it up against the wall, it sticks to the wall. So he threw it 4 amas in Rosh Hashanah, and it hit the wall, a wall that was there that was above 10 tvachim. So Zok Gemara, it's kazarik ba'aver. It's like he threw it into the air, because above 10 tvachim was a makam ptur. So the 4 amas that it traveled, we consider it a makam ptur, and there's no chiyuv whatsoever. But if it hits the wall less than 10 tvachim from the ground, lamata meisar, that's kazarik baritz. Kazarik baritz arba amas chayiv. So if you throw something 4 amas and it splats against the wall, and it splats against the wall below 10 tvachim, you were maver something dalar amas, and the fact that it splats against the wall is considered a proper hanacha. Now, at this point, according to Rashi, the Gemara is learning that it was exactly 4 amas that I threw it. It was precisely 4 amas. I've beaten about the Gemara asked, there is no hanacha because it's not sitting on top of something. It's splat against the side wall. We're talking about something really sticky that actually sticks to the wall, and therefore it's considered a hanacha. Based on this halacha, for the Gemara of Hamai, hakamayit me arba amas. This, if I threw it exactly 4 amas, and it's still on the side of the wall, so let's have a look what it looks like. I'll just draw a quick picture. I have my wall here, and here's my 10 tvachim mark, and I splat this devela right at the side of the wall. I threw it from this point. From here to here is 4 amas. This drawing is not to scale. So it's 4 amas from here to here. The problem is this Agudah DYLive is sticking into the 4 amas. So not all of it traveled the full 4 amos, because it's still within this part sticking out, protruding from the wall, is still within the 4 amos. So how could Rabbi Yochanan say that it's chayiv? The Gulut Vela is being mamayit from the 4 amos. Zok Gemara, there's a very big difference. That's not a right to our case, because Hasam loy mevatale. When I throw the Gulut Vela on the wall, I'm not being mevatel the Gulut Vela to the wall. I plan on taking it off. It still has value. It's not going to be bottled to the wall. Since it's not bottled to the wall, therefore we'll say there's a chiyuv. But hacha mevatale. Here, when he's putting the earth into the bar, he's being mevatel. So this is a little bit difficult to understand. So let's see what Rashi says, and then we'll probably have to look at Tosfos to get a better pshat. So Zok Gemara, hasam mevatale devela. Hasam lemma devela. Hilchach lav miyutu. Since I'm not being mevatel the fig to the wall, it's not going to diminish the 4 amos, because it's still connected to the wall, and the wall doesn't end earlier. So we're not going to say that the wall ends over here before the 4 amos, which is where the dveila is sticking out to, because the dveila is not bottled to the wall. So the wall is still here. If the wall is still here, we considered that it traveled 4 amos. But when I'm putting the dveila, when I'm putting earth into a bar, the earth that I'm putting into the bar will be bottled to the bar, and therefore it's considered like the bar was diminished. So that's what the Gemara says over here. Tosfos does not like this pshat at all. So Tosfos says something very interesting. So let's just quickly run through Tosfos. The first thing Rashi has to say is this whole raya is only if I threw it precisely 4 amos, and therefore the fact that the devela is sticking out, so Tosfos doesn't like that. Because if this was actually the case, Zok Tosfos Ataka should not be chayiv. It's lemaisa, part of the fig is still within the 4 amos. Just like the a couple of Mishnayos ago, where we discussed that if the basket is on the border, halfway in Rishus HaYochid, halfway in Rishus Rabbim, the chiyuv of Eitzah only comes once everything is out. Here, the best you could say is that the outer surface of the devela is traveled 4 amos, but the whole devela did not travel the 4 amos. So how could Rashi say that this would be a case of chiyuv? Tosfos doesn't like this. So Zok Tosfos, a different shot, very interesting, and he says as follows. Let me see if I can find the teretz of Tosfos. V'nir l'ri, the Mari Hacha Shazara Chut l'Arabamis. Avada we're talking about, he threw it 50 feet. It was way more than 4 amos. Kamoy b'chol makom, just like in other places, because Tosfos asks many times throughout Shas, the Gemara or the Mishnayos talks about a case of Zarek Dalet Amos. And if every time it says plain Zarek Dalet Amos, it means exactly that Amos and not a millimeter more, there's so many other places, other Mishnayos that the Gemara could have brought this raya from. Rather, Dalet Amos means a minimum of Dalet Amos, but Avadi threw it way more than Dalet Amos. So Rashi's whole theory about part of it sticking into the Dalet Amos and it diminishes it from traveling 4 amos, that's not true. This thing traveled way more than 4 amos. So what's the issue here? What happens is, once the devela hits the side of the wall, now that airspace is no longer Rishus HaRabim. It's now Rishus HaYochid, because the wall was part of a Rishus HaYochid. So now this becomes an extension of the wall, so the wall is Rishus HaYochid. Shabbat l'koisel. Once the devela is bottled to the wall, it becomes part of the wall. So it's no longer Rishus HaRabim. The whole idea was that when it lands on the wall over here, it's still in the airspace of Rishus HaRabim. But if this becomes bottled to the wall, now this is no longer the airspace of Rishus HaRabim, this is the airspace of Rishus HaYochid. So Zok Tosfos, therefore, if he would have thrown, once the devela was stuck there, if I would have thrown a needle or a thorn 4 amos, v'nochal advela, and it would have landed on top of this fig that's now stuck to the side of the wall, or niska b'soichoi, or it got stuck inside it, hoya potter, he would be potter. Makam advela nismayit midin rishus harabim, because there's no longer a din rishus harabim on that tvela. V'afilu hachi chayiv, and it's still chayiv. Hoylu b'tchilas azrika at koydem anocha hoyisham rishus harabim alav. Since until the tvela stuck there, that airspace was considered rishus harabim. V'anocha umiyit rishus harabim b'hadi adadikasi. That area lost its din of rishus harabim at the very same time that the vela got stuck there, which is exactly what we're talking about when you throw some earth into a bar that's 10 tefachim deep, and the earth makes it now that's not 10 tefachim deep anymore. Putting down the earth at the bottom of this bar, and the bar becoming now less than 10 tefachim deep, occur at the same instant. The Gemara answers that when the Devela sticks to the sidewall, it's not bottled to the wall, so that's why that airspace remains Rishus Harabim.
Yosy, the Gemara says, "How come I might me arba amois?"
Correct.
How's that fit in? So how's that fit in with Tosis?
So Rashi said, Tosis explains, "V'akam might be dalar amis." So Tosis shemakam advela nisbatlo mitoyres Rishus Harabim. So it doesn't fit in so good because what it's really saying, it's not Rishus Harabim, but the reason why it's technically right to use the word nispat l'merabamis is because what Tosis is suggesting is that once this becomes part of the wall, once the development becomes part of the wall, so now the area underneath it is no longer Rishus Harabim airspace, it's Rishus Hayochid airspace. So about K'bevatl B'dalaramis means that it's taken away some of that airspace, so some of the area that it traveled through is no longer Rishus Harabim anymore, some of that is Rishus Hayochid.
And anyway, what makes it worse, because now you're going from Rishus Harabim to a Rishus Hayochid.
I was thinking the same thing. How did that help you? You should still be chayiv because you were Motzoei from a Rishus Harabim, you were machnas from a Rishus Harabim into a Rishus Hayochid. I don't know how Toshus deals with that kasha. That's a very good kasha. If someone could help me and explain to me why you don't have another problem, I don't know. But maybe the kasha is from the fact that Rabbi Yochanan said that the chiyuv is al mavir, and he didn't say the chiyuv is al Motzoei Rishus L'shus. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says. Boy Rava, another interesting question. Zorak daf, v'nochal gabi yisedos. Now we know if you have a peg in Rishus Harabim, that's 10 tefachim high, that's 10 tefachim high, it's considered Rishus Harabim because it doesn't have any surface area on top. So what if I had a series of pegs? All of them would have been considered Rishus Harabim, and I took a board, like a flat piece of plywood, and I threw it, and it landed on top of these pegs. So that created a Mokam Dalet al Dalet. So that made it that it should become a Rishus Hayochid. So before I had pegs, which had a status of Rishus Harabim, and when I threw a board on top of it, it created a counter of a Mokam Dalet al Dalet. So your piece of wood landed, and it became a Rishus Hayochid b'vasachas. Mao. My Kamaboy, what's the Shaila? Hanachas chayfetz v'asiyas mechitza v'hadei dodikasi. Your shaila is that the chayfetz landed, this flat board landed on top of the pegs, and that made it into Rishus Hayochid that happened at the same time. Well, Hani Rabbi Yochanan, isn't that the exact shaila that Rabbi Yochanan had using different circumstances? So the Gemara, Kika Maboy Leila Rava. You're right. Rava's shaila is a little different. It's going to Zorg Daf the chayfetz al gabav. He threw up plywood, but there was an apple on top of that plywood, and he threw that together on top of those pegs. What's the halacha? Even the bad dodikasi kanachas chayvetz v'asis mechitza dami in its potter. At the end of the day, the apple is connected to the board; it all lands at the same time, so therefore it will be potter. Dilma kiven delay efsher delay middle porta v'adunayich. Since that apple is going to bounce a bit when it lands, it's as if you put the apple on top of that Rishus Hayochid a nanosecond after it became a Rishus Hayochid, and therefore it's kaisis mechitza v'nachas chayvetz dami, and it'll be chayiv. So Gemara teku, it's blibing with a suffix. So
if it bounces, then it's not his response. It's not his koich anymore.
I'm not sure. It seems like it is. Let's see what Rashi says.
The bounce makes it as the bounce is. He didn't do the bounce.
It came from his koich. Let me first read Rashi. Maybe I'm making a mistake. Kasis mechitza bereisha v'od nechas chayvetz dami v'chayiv the b'shas hanachosoi for nasa daf shel Rishus Harabim I think it says, one second, I think Rashi speaks about a bounce.
Just a yachid.
It's impossible that the chayvetz will not be lifted up above me'al hadaf b'shas hanachas hadaf. It's impossible that the apple won't be lifted up a drop from this counter when the counter is placed upon those pegs, and then it'll fall back down. So Rashi clearly says, I think Rashi thinks it's like a bounce. It's impossible that the apple won't pop up a little bit to go back down, and Rashi clearly holds that that's considered all my koyach that I'm doing. I mean, those are the words Rashi says.
I think we've seen before. I can't remember where, but I think we've seen before that when something bounces, it's not considered as koyach anymore. I think we saw this. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. So he has Reb Zilberstein has a very interesting shayla about these bavasachas things. Nowadays, a lot of people for their minyanim have tents. I know at the 85 Bannockburn minyan, there are tents. Each person gets their own tent. And I just want to mention, if you want to have such a luxurious minyan, where you can get your own tent, you don't have to doodle before, you don't have to wear masks, or maybe you don't have to wear masks, but you can come and get your own tent. And at 7:30 tomorrow morning, you can have that opportunity to get your own tent, or 7:10 tomorrow afternoon for mincha, followed by Ma'ariv after plug. You can get your own tent. That's quite up a tent. And there's a tent. It's not tense. It's not tense at all. It's relaxed. It's a tent, not tense. So what would be if you're in a Rosh Hashanah in a tent and you pick something up? So the tent itself is a Rosh Hashanah, and you lift something up. So you make an akira from a Rosh Hashanah. And then after you lift it up, someone dismantles the tent and takes the tent away. So now you're in the Rosh Hashanah. Are you allowed to put it back down now? Because now you made an akira in Rosh Hashanah, and now you're making a hanocha in Rosh Hashanah.
It's tentative.
Very good. Very good. So Reb Zilberstein holds that for sure it won't be a problem because you didn't make a ma'aseh hitzah. The landscape changed on you. So he holds for sure that wouldn't be a problem. But we're talking about all these bavasachas things, so he suggests such a shayla. If the Olam wants, we could do 2 more minutes and we can learn the Gemara that's familiar, or we can leave it for tomorrow. I think it's quite late. It's already after midnight. So let's leave it for tomorrow. What time are we learning tomorrow morning?
9 o'clock.
Okay, and how about the early time? Anybody? When do we usually
officially the official starting time for Sunday morning is 6:30. Do you want to make it at 7 o'clock?
Well, I'm fine either way.
Okay, I would.
We're not doing a doodle poll.
No, we're not doing doodle poll. We're how many people are still on here? 18. Everybody's here, so I would suggest you start at 7. Is it okay?
Some of us want to go to the 8 o'clock minyan, so I would. 8 o'clock minyanim would also.
So 8 o'clock minyanim. So then.
So is that a quarter to 7?
Or do you join in at 9 o'clock? I'm not available at 9, but what do you want to do?
6:45.
6:45 tomorrow.
Okay, see you tomorrow. Bright and early, bushy-tailed, bright-eyed. Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and I think that for next week we should consider learning during the day. The Shabbos is long until 12. It's a short Motzoei Shabbos.
Yosy's not here.
I'll be here.
No, yes, he'll be on Zoom.
I'll be
He's
on
going to
Zoom.
be in late. He'll be on Zoom. He's not missing.
I'm not missing.
He's trying to set records.